Good afternoon, Wealth Our Way family. What is going on? Is your man, Charles Tank Harris, the founder and chief visionary officer of the financial literacy platform, Wealth Our Way, where our motto is wealth is not only for the wealthy. Today is Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. And as always, I want to just give you guys just much love for being here with me as we stream live to Facebook and to YouTube. And a special salute and shout out to the overnight crew who squeezed their 15 minutes of financial literacy in, pre-recorded anywhere they can get it, whether they're hiding under the bed from their kids or on their lunch break at work. Make sure you get this knowledge. Today is crazy. You see the background's a little different because I'm on site with some of my favorite clients. You know, I never put nobody on blast, but let's just say I'm in the streets of Philly where I was born and raised and where I belong at, visiting with one of my corporate clients and making sure that everything is going the way it's supposed to go. You still see the banner going across the bottom for Greenwood. I want to give you an update on Greenwood. They have moved me along to the finalists. I think there's 3 to 5 of us who are all now in the background check phase. And surprise to some of you who've known me a very long time, my background came back clean. So that cat I choked out, never mind. But anyway, it all worked out. So right now I'm moving to the interview phase to see if I will actually host or co-host with Hill Harper. I just want to thank all of you guys who went to the Greenwood Bank Instagram page and voted or viewed the video. I thank you very, very much. So what have we been doing this week? It's estate planning week. We're talking about the difference between wills, trusts, durable power of attorneys. We started off yesterday just explaining the estate planning process, talking about what probate is and what probate is not, and the importance of having a will, the importance of guardianship. I just got made aware by my son about a young fella who was coming out of the University of Kentucky and about to go into the NBA draft and was killed in an automobile accident in California. And I was listening to something on my drive down to Philly this morning about how his family is, first of all, completely devastated that a young man lost his life, but there's just a lot of controversy surrounding the next steps for the family, because who expects a 19 or 20-year-old not to be with us? And when we talk about planning, we have to have the difficult conversations. We have to talk about things that make us a little uncomfortable, because planning is about being prepared in the face of anything that might occur. And unfortunately, if we knew things were going to occur, we wouldn't necessarily even need the plan. We would be ready. But when things can come through happenstance or just the most odd and unique circumstances, there is a way to plan for it. And you guys have heard me say here before, we all have a plan. Everybody has a plan. You may be saying to yourself, what's Tank talking about? I haven't done anything yet. You still have a plan, because something's going to happen when you die. Something's going to happen when you fall down the steps and are disabled and unable to work. It just may not be the plan that you want. It may be your auntie's sofa. It may be your wife packing up all your stuff and leaving, but you have a plan. What I'm here to tell you and teach you is to make a better plan. Make a plan that works for you. Make a plan that, my grandmother used to say that an ounce of prevention beats a pound of cure. And I didn't really understand what that meant when I was younger, but now I do. It is so much easier, no matter how unpleasant the task may be, to prepare before something happens than to fix it after it has happened. So for the past, I want to say 2.5 weeks, we've been working with clients, and there's a pretty dearth amount of Wealth Our Way clients. So it's going from the least complicated to the most complicated. So it started with the foundational level clients to do the preliminary will questionnaires and get wills up and running. And what we have encountered is that a lot of the clients on the foundational level, our clients only get a will. As you get higher up in the Wealth Our Way system, you get living will, you get living trust, durable power of attorneys. And what we're finding is that a lot of our clients who just get a will actually also need a trust. Because if you have minor children, we talked about this yesterday, a will is very good for right when you die. It's a point in time document. It says do A, B, and C. Give this to this person, give this to that person, pay these bills. And then it's done. It's read during the probate process and it's over. If you have a 9-year-old or a 14-year-old or your favorite puppy, whatever still needs continuing care, you can't really disseminate those instructions in a will. You can say, I want this person to handle this, but ongoing, you don't have any documentation to guide that person. That is where a trust comes into play. So today we're going to talk about not only how a trust differentiates from a will, but the difference between a living trust and what's called a testamentary or residuary trust, which is what happens to a trust after you've passed away. So it's not two separate documents. You create a trust while you're alive, it's a living trust because you're alive. The minute you pass, it is now a residuary trust. And I'm good at math, horrible at words. So, you're starting to hear my lisp come out when I try to say residuary. I have to say it very slowly. But the reality is that these are all documents that basically lay out what you wish to have happen and who you wish to have do these things on your behalf. So when we talked about a will yesterday, the key person helping you out in your will is your executor. It's the person who stands in front of the probate judge and says, this is what Tank wanted to have happen when he passes away. In a trust, it is a trustee. A trustee is a person or an entity. That's an important distinction to realize. You don't have to name a person to be your trustee. You can name what is called a corporate trustee. When I worked at, I want to say it was Payne Weber, as they got acquired by UBS. UBS is a private bank, and they served as corporate trustee to a lot of their clients, because you may have some people in your life who you think are very competent and you would want to give them this responsibility, and you have the document which instructs them on how to act. But what if something happens to them? What if they pass away? What if they become incapacitated? You want to make sure that whatever your wishes are, they can be followed. When I was married the first time, I always, tell people in my first marriage, it ran completely different than my current marriage. In my first marriage, my wife didn't know anything about anything financial, not because she wasn't intelligent enough to know. It's just because that was how we ran the house. She took care of kids. That's what we had, a lot of them. And I did everything financial. Had I passed away, she would have known how to get into the bank accounts. And that's poor planning on my part. That's something that, as a financial professional for a bunch of professional athletes and business owners, I never stopped. Thank God nothing happened, but I never stopped to think, what happens tomorrow to my family? I had a huge, I considered a huge $5 million insurance policy, $3 million of term, $2 million of supplemental that she would have received if I died. And I don't know what she would have done with $5 million. I don't, I've sat in so many living rooms and talked to clients where I ask a husband, what would you want to have happen if you passed away and your wife inherited X number of dollars? And then I'd ask the wife, what would you do if that happened? The answers are very seldom the same answer. Women tend to be, and I don't say this to do anything sexist. This is my personal experience of what I've seen. Women tend to be risk averse. So when that lump sum of money comes in, the majority of the women I've spoken to, their statements are, I'm paying off the mortgage. I'm paying off the cars. I'm getting rid of debt. He's gone. I got to do everything now. I don't want these things hanging over my head. And you should see the men who I've told they can't say anything because we're pretending they're dead in this conversation, turning different colors because they're like, oh no, that's the worst thing to do. Invest the money, live off the difference. And women are like, I'm not having any of that. Like, I'm getting these bills off my plate. So these are the conversations that you need to have. We talked about that last week with spousal planning. And now these are the conversations you need to cement into some type of document, i.e. a living trust that dictates what your wishes are. So your wife would know, or your husband would know, take this $5 million down to the brokerage firm, buy this diversified portfolio of ETFs or mutual funds, take this much money every month, take care of the house. That you can make it as detailed or as broad as you wish to make it. When you're talking about minor children, this was something, and a lot of what I know isn't just book education, it's actually from working with clients. And I learned from my clients the same way they learned from me. One of the biggest things that I had to learn in my early 30s when I was working with the professional athletes is that you come from poverty, whether it's me growing up in West and Southwest Philly on food stamps, or one of my football players growing up in the South, eating gator half his life. When you start to make money and you've now moved out to these big neighborhoods in the suburbs and you got these big houses and you got these fancy cars and your kids don't sound like you sound when you grew up, you want your kids to have better. That's what every parent wants, whether they're wealthy or average income or even struggling. You want your kids to have better. You don't necessarily know how to give them better without crippling them from taking the fight out of them. You know, I spent time with my kids the last couple of weeks down in Georgia and took them to the AT&T store to get new phones. And it was just my son, who's 13, was just so very nonchalantly, like almost like he was doing me a favor. Yeah, I'll take the iPhone 12, Dad. You know, I said, dog, that's an $1,100 phone. Like, you just going to take the iPhone 12? But I'm happy that in his mind, that was an afterthought to him. He doesn't have to think of, wow, $1,100 is a substantial amount of money. I wonder what my dad had to do to be able to buy me an $1,100 phone. It didn't cross his mind. Now, I am trying to instill in him financial consciousness. And I was very, very happy that he said to me, Dad, I lost my AirPods. I want to buy a new pair. He didn't ask me. He pulled his wallet out. He pulled cash out of his wallet and gave me the money to buy his AirPods, which I thought was incredibly responsible. Of course, y'all know I'm a softie. I gave the boy back $60 of his money because I was proud of him for making that gesture. But with that being said, you have the ability to dictate how your kids will get money. And one of the athletes and I were brainstorming. He said, I don't want my kids to get $10 million when I pass away. That's ridiculous to me. So and now I see it very commonly, and I don't want to say he and I invented it, but we didn't ask anybody outside the room we were in to tier the money that the kids would get and tie the money to their own personal success. So what we did was, at 25, 30, and 35, the kids would get lump sums of money. In the interim, every year, they would get money tantamount to 30% of what they were earning as their own salary. So this way, you can encourage a child who says, you know what? I'm not like Dad. I don't want to be a businessman and make $1 million or whatever. I'm going to be an artist, and artists don't make any money. You're still giving her some money or him some money. You have another kid that wants to become a doctor and a neurologist and is making $800,000. He's going to get a higher amount of money because you structured it that way. You can even make it so that it's not pegged to production of finances. If you want to encourage your children to be more charitable, more like the artist, then you can give higher levels of compensation to that type of activity. The thing is to reward the behavior that you wish to see. Wealthy people call it controlling from the grave. Wealthy people tend to be very controlling. They tend to be very much, hey, I worked for this. Now you have to earn it yourself. You can dictate that in a trust. Inside of a trust as well, besides for your trustee, the other party to it is the beneficiary. So you can have multiple beneficiaries if you have multiple children. Your beneficiaries do not have to be relatives. You can name inside your will. In fact, you need to name inside your will what part of your assets are bequested. We talked about that word yesterday. Request is when you ask somebody for something. Bequest is when you give something to somebody. So you can name in your will who you want things to be bequested to. So going back to my athletes, I had athletes that had Super Bowl rings. I want my son to get my ring. I want my daughter to get my artwork. That's outside of your now residuary estate after all of your bequests have been made. And then in the trust, you can name the things that are financial. Now, before we close out, trusts have to be funded. So you can name, let's say you have a life insurance policy, and your life insurance policy has a line to name a beneficiary. My clients, we encourage them to set up a trust and name the trust as the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. So those proceeds go there. And once that trust is funded, then the actual actions inside the trust then take place. So with that all being said, we're coming up on 15 minutes. I want to thank you guys for joining us. Tomorrow, we'll talk about durable power of attorneys, also known as healthcare proxies, for what happened when you become incapacitated and someone needs to make medical decisions on your behalf or other decisions on your behalf because you're unable to. And then on Friday, I have confirmation that we will have an estate attorney on to answer any questions, because I tell you, I am not an attorney. I just play one on the internet. And I don't do that either. So in reality, I'm going to give you some high level information to get you thinking, and then you're going to dig deeper either on consultations or on your own, or you'll come back here when I bring an expert on. So I want to thank you guys all for attending. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 12:30. Remember, wealth is not only for the wealthy. Take care.